Tom was a cowboy who lived on a quiet ranch at the edge of the plains. His days were usually filled with simple work. He would feed the animals, mend fences, and ride through the fields to check the land. He loved his routine, but he also knew life could be unpredictable. The plains were beautiful, but they were full of surprises, both good and bad. One afternoon, the sun was hot and high in the sky. Tom had finished repairing a fence along the eastern side of the ranch. Sweat ran down his face as he wiped it with the back of his hand. He mounted his horse, a strong black mare named Daisy, and rode toward the river that cut through the land. Tom liked to check the water there. It was a place where wild animals sometimes came, and he often saw deer, birds, or even coyotes. As he rode closer, he noticed something unusual near the riverbank. A horse was lying on the ground. Its coat was dusty and matted, and it seemed to be in pain. Tom slowed Daisy and looked carefully. The horse had a deep cut on its leg, and it was breathing heavily. Its eyes were wide and frightened. Tom's heart tightened. He had seen injured animals before, but this horse looked especially weak. Without hesitation, Tom dismounted and approached slowly. He spoke softly to calm the animal. "Easy, boy. I'm not going to hurt you." The horse lifted its head slightly and whinnied weakly. Tom saw that it was thin and its hooves were cracked from walking long distances. The sun was making it weaker by the minute. Tom knew he had to act quickly. He tied Daisy nearby and ran to the ranch to get some supplies. He returned with a bucket of clean water, a blanket, and some basic first aid items. He poured the water near the horse. At first it hesitated, but the thirst was too strong. Slowly the horse bent down and drank. Tom could see relief in its eyes. Next he examined the wound. Dirt had gotten into the cut, and it was swollen. Tom cleaned it carefully using warm water and a cloth. He applied a natural ointment he kept for such emergencies. The horse shivered but did not struggle. It seemed to sense that Tom was there to help, not to harm. After the wound was treated, Tom gently wrapped the leg with a clean bandage. When the horse was finally stabilized, Tom led it back to the ranch. He made a soft bed of hay in the stable. The horse lowered itself onto the hay and rested. It's breathing slower now. Tom gave it some oats mixed with water, and the horse ate slowly. He watched it carefully, making sure it was comfortable. The afternoon turned into evening, and the sun dipped low behind the hills. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink. Tom stood outside the stable and wiped his forehead. He felt tired but happy. Helping the horse had taken his energy, but it had also filled him with a quiet joy. He had always believed that animals could feel kindness, and this horse seemed to understand that he meant no harm. As night fell, Tom went back into the house for dinner. He could still hear the soft sounds of the horse moving in the stable. He thought about the plains and how wide and free they were. The horse belonged to that world, and now it was safe, at least for the night. Tom wondered what had happened to it before he found it. Perhaps it had been abandoned or lost, or maybe it had injured itself while running in the wild. He did not know, and he did not need to. What mattered was that he had helped and the horse was alive. Before going to bed, Tom returned to the stable. The horse lifted its head and looked at him. Its eyes were calm and trusting. Tom smiled and patted its neck gently. "Rest well, friend. Tomorrow will be a better day." As he stepped outside, the night air was cool and quiet. Stars twinkled above and a soft breeze rustled the leaves. Tom felt a sense of peace. He knew that the plains could be harsh, but moments like this reminded him why he loved his life on the ranch. Helping the horse had been a simple act, but it felt important. He did not know what the future held, but he knew he would be ready for it. That night, Tom slept with the feeling that something unusual was beginning. The plains were wide, full of secrets and surprises, and he had just witnessed one of them. The horse rested peacefully, unaware of what the next day would bring. Tom had no idea that his kindness would soon create a bond that would change everything on his ranch forever. The next morning, Tom woke early. The first rays of the sun touched the ranch, and the air was cool and fresh. He stepped outside with a cup of coffee in hand, glancing at the stable. The horse from yesterday was already awake, standing quietly and chewing on hay. Its coat looked cleaner in the morning light, and its eyes were bright. Tom smiled. The horse had slept well and seemed stronger than before. Tom fed Daisy and checked the fences along the ranch. Everything seemed normal, but there was a strange feeling in the air. A soft wind blew across the plains, carrying distant sounds. Tom paused and listened. He thought he heard hooves, but the sound was faint. He frowned. There were no horses nearby except the ones in his care. Then he saw movement on the horizon. At first it looked like dust rising in the distance. As he watched more closely, he realized it was not dust. It was a herd of horses. A large group was running across the plains, their hooves thundering on the dry earth. The sight made Tom stop in his tracks. He had never seen so many wild horses so close to his ranch. The horse from yesterday, now fully alert, lifted its head. It looked toward the herd and its ears pricked up. To Tom's surprise, the horse began to move toward them. The herd slowed as if waiting for the injured horse to join. The wild horses circled near the edge of Tom's property, their eyes curious and watchful. They did not seem aggressive, but their presence was powerful. Tom realized that something unusual was happening. Tom felt a mixture of excitement and caution. He had spent years around animals, and he knew how unpredictable wild horses could be. He approached slowly, raising a hand to show he meant no harm. The horse he had helped nudged him gently, and he patted its neck. "It's okay, boy. I'm not going to hurt you," he whispered. The horse whinnied softly in response. The herd stayed at a distance but watched carefully. Tom could see their strength and intelligence. Each horse moved with a grace that only wild animals could have. He noticed the colors of their coats, the way their muscles moved under the sunlight, and the rhythm of their steps. It was a moment of awe. He realized that his small act of kindness yesterday had created a connection he had not expected. Tom decided to stay calm and let the horses come closer on their own. He went back to the stable and brought some fresh water and hay. He placed them near the edge of the pasture, where the herd could see but not reach immediately. The horse he had saved drank first, and the others watched. Slowly the herd approached, keeping a respectful distance. Tom could feel their curiosity and trust building. As the morning passed, Tom sat on a fence and watched. The wild horses circled the ranch, occasionally stopping to graze near the fence. The horse from yesterday stayed close to him, sometimes looking back at the herd as if guiding them. Tom noticed that the herd seemed protective of the horse. They stayed near, not out of fear, but out of care. It amazed him to see how animals could understand loyalty and gratitude. By noon, the herd had moved closer, forming a loose circle around the pasture. Tom remained quiet and still, letting the horses get used to his presence. Occasionally, he spoke softly to the horse he had saved. "You're safe now," he said. The horse nuzzled his hand gently, and he felt a warmth in his heart. The wild herd seemed to sense the calm between Tom and the horse. They relaxed slightly, grazing and moving slowly. Tom knew he had to be patient. Building trust with wild animals took time. He watched as the herd explored the ranch, occasionally lifting their heads to look at him. He could see the intelligence in their eyes, the way they communicated silently with one another. The connection between the horse he had saved and the herd was clear. One small act of kindness had not only helped one animal, but it had also affected an entire group. As the afternoon sun rose higher, Tom felt a quiet pride. He realized that the plains were full of surprises, and that the animals he shared his land with were part of something greater. The wild horses had not come to attack or threaten him. They had come because of trust and understanding. It was a lesson Tom would remember. By the time evening approached, the herd had settled near the pasture, still keeping a watchful eye on Tom and the horse he had helped. Tom went back to the stable and prepared dinner for himself and the animals. He felt a sense of peace. The plains had given him a gift, and it was a reminder of the simple truth. Kindness could create bonds that no one could break, even between humans and wild creatures. That night, as Tom watched the sunset behind the hills, he knew that life on the ranch had changed. The horse he had saved was no longer alone, and the wild herd was no longer a distant group of strangers. A quiet connection had formed, and Tom felt ready to see where this new relationship would lead. The plains were wide, and the possibilities felt endless. The next morning, Tom woke to the soft sounds of the ranch. Birds were singing, and the wind carried a fresh scent from the plains. He stepped outside and saw the horse he had saved standing near the stable. Its coat gleamed in the morning sun, and it looked alert and strong. Tom smiled, feeling a sense of pride. He had done something good, and now the horse was healthy and full of life. When he looked toward the pasture, he noticed the wild herd again. They had moved a little closer to the ranch overnight, grazing peacefully on the grass near the fence. Tom could see the wounded horse keeping a careful eye on them, as if it were a link between the herd and him. He knew that today he would have to be very careful and patient if he wanted to interact more closely with the horses. Tom walked slowly toward the pasture, keeping his movements gentle and calm. He carried a bucket of water and a few carrots he had picked from the garden. The horse he had helped nudged him softly and followed him toward the fence. The wild herd watched from a short distance, their ears pricked and their eyes alert. Tom paused and lowered himself slightly, showing that he meant no harm. "Easy now," he said softly. The horse he had saved whinnied in response, then stepped forward a little. The herd stayed back but did not run away. They seemed curious watching the small interaction. Tom placed the bucket of water near the fence and scattered some carrots on the grass. The horse he had helped moved first, drinking the water and picking up a carrot. Tom watched closely. One by one, the wild horses stepped closer, still cautious but drawn to the food and water. Tom remained calm, sitting on the ground and letting them approach on their own. He noticed the way the herd moved together, communicating silently with soft snorts and gentle touches. Each horse seemed aware of the others, but they also seemed to understand that Tom was not a threat. The wounded horse stayed close to Tom, occasionally looking back at the herd as if signaling that it was safe. Tom reached out slowly and touched its neck. The horse leaned into his hand and he felt a warmth spread through his chest. Helping this one animal had created trust, and now that trust was spreading to the entire herd. Tom realized that patience and kindness could create bonds that words could not explain. Time passed as Tom sat quietly, observing the horses. They drank from the bucket, nibbled on carrots, and grazed on the grass near the fence. Occasionally, the herd would lift their heads and glance at him, but they did not move away. Tom could sense their intelligence. Each horse seemed to understand its place in the group and the new rules of trust that he had quietly established. By midday, Tom decided to try something he had never done before. He slowly reached into the bucket of water and cupped some in his hands. The wounded horse approached first and drank directly from his palms. Tom felt a strong connection as he looked into its eyes. Then a few of the wild horses stepped closer, encouraged by the actions of their companion. Tom remained still, letting them decide when they were ready. It was a slow process, but by the afternoon, several horses were drinking from his hands and even touching him gently with their noses. The herd still kept some distance, but the tension from the morning had disappeared. Tom felt a sense of joy he had never experienced before. He had always loved animals, but this was different. This was a connection built on trust, respect, and care. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Tom stood up and stretched. The herd remained calm, grazing and moving slowly near the fence. The wounded horse stayed close, nuzzling his hand once more before returning to its friends. Tom felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that the herd had accepted him, not because of fear, but because of understanding. Tom spent the evening preparing more food and water near the pasture. He watched as the horses slowly moved closer to the fence again, grazing peacefully. He realized that the herd was not just visiting. They were forming a bond with him and the horse he had saved. This bond was quiet, strong, and real. Tom knew that it was rare to witness such trust between humans and wild animals. Before nightfall, Tom returned to the house but kept a careful eye on the pasture. The horses settled near the fence for the evening, their movements calm and relaxed. The wounded horse stayed close to the edge of the group, keeping watch over both Tom and the herd. Tom knew that the next day would bring more challenges and opportunities to build trust, but he felt ready. As he looked at the plains stretching out under the setting sun, Tom smiled. The wild herd had not only found a safe place near the ranch, but it had also given him a lesson about patience, kindness, and connection. One small act of help had grown into something far greater than he had imagined. He felt a quiet excitement for the days ahead, knowing that this was only the beginning of a remarkable bond between humans and the wild horses of the plains. The next morning, Tom woke up to a calm and bright day. Sunlight poured over the ranch and the air smelled fresh from the plains. He stepped outside and looked toward the pasture. The wild herd was already moving slowly across the grass, grazing near the fence. The horse he had helped yesterday stood nearby, alert and healthy. Tom smiled. He could see that the herd had grown comfortable being near his ranch. Tom decided it was time to take small steps to care for them. He wanted to help without frightening them. First, he repaired an old water trough near the edge of the pasture. It had been broken for months, and he thought the horses could use it. He filled it with fresh water and waited quietly. The wounded horse approached first and drank eagerly. The wild horses stayed back at first, watching carefully. Tom spoke softly to them. "It's safe, friends. You can drink here." His voice was calm and steady. Slowly, a few horses walked closer and dipped their heads to the water. One by one, the herd joined in. They drank quietly, and Tom could see the trust growing between him and the animals. It was a small victory, but it felt important. After the water trough, Tom brought some hay and scattered it along the edge of the pasture. The horses were curious but cautious. The wounded horse moved first, nibbling at the hay. The others followed more carefully, keeping their distance but not moving away. Tom watched them with amazement. Their movements were graceful, and their eyes seemed to watch him with understanding. As the day passed, Tom spent time observing the herd. He noticed small details about their behavior. The horses communicated with soft whinnies and gentle touches. They moved together like a family, protecting the young ones and helping the older ones. The wounded horse now led the herd at times, showing the bond it had with the other horses. Tom realized that kindness could create leadership and trust even in the wild. By afternoon, Tom decided to ride Daisy along the pasture edge. He wanted to get closer to the horses but still remain calm and respectful. He moved slowly, letting Daisy step lightly across the grass. The herd lifted their heads but did not run. The wounded horse stayed near him, nudging his hand gently. Tom felt a connection that was growing stronger with every moment. He spent hours near the herd, giving them food and water and speaking softly. The horses seemed to recognize him as someone who would not hurt them. They grazed freely, sometimes coming very close, sometimes stepping back, always aware but never fearful. Tom realized that these moments were rare. Few people ever experienced trust like this from wild animals. He felt lucky and grateful. By evening, Tom prepared a small area with fresh hay for the horses to rest near the fence. He knew they were wild and could not be kept inside, but he wanted them to feel safe. The wounded horse stayed close to him, while the rest of the herd settled nearby. Tom watched as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The herd moved gently as the light faded, calm and peaceful. Tom reflected on the day. He had spent years working on the ranch, caring for animals and maintaining the land. But this was different. This was not just work, it was a connection. The herd had come near because of the small kindness he had shown to one horse. He understood that each action mattered. Helping even one creature could have a ripple effect, reaching far beyond what he could see. As night fell, Tom returned to his house but kept a careful eye on the pasture. The wild horses stayed near the fence, resting quietly. The wounded horse remained close, nuzzling the edge of the fence. Tom felt proud and humble at the same time. He had not forced this bond. It had grown naturally with patience and care. Before going to bed, Tom stepped outside once more. The stars shone brightly above the plains. The herd was calm. The wounded horse rested, and the ranch felt alive with a quiet energy. Tom knew that the next day would bring more chances to strengthen this bond. He felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that kindness could create harmony between humans and the wild. Tom returned inside, feeling content. The ranch was quiet, but it was also full of life. The wild herd had become part of his world, and he had learned that trust and patience were the keys to understanding nature. He knew that caring for the herd would take effort, but he was ready. The plains had given him a gift, and he was determined to honor it. The morning began quietly at the ranch. Tom woke to a soft breeze and the gentle sound of birds singing. He stepped outside and looked toward the pasture. The wild herd was already moving slowly across the grass, grazing peacefully near the fence. The wounded horse he had saved yesterday stood nearby, alert and strong. Tom smiled. Over the past days, he had built a connection with these animals, and it felt like a special friendship was forming. As the day went on, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. The wind picked up, blowing dust across the plains. Tom knew that a storm was approaching. He felt concerned for the herd. Wild horses were strong, but storms could be dangerous. The thunder rolled softly in the distance, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Tom moved quickly to check the water troughs and make sure the horses had food and fresh water. The herd had noticed the change in the weather. They stopped grazing and began moving closer together. The wounded horse stayed near Tom, as if it understood that he could help them. Tom called softly to the animals. "It's okay, friends. The storm will pass. You're safe here." His voice was calm, steady, and gentle. The horses seemed to sense his reassurance. The rain grew heavier and the wind blew harder. Thunder boomed across the plains and lightning lit the sky. Tom worried about the younger horses in the herd. He went outside with a lantern and moved carefully toward the fence. The herd watched him, their eyes wide but not fearful. The wounded horse stepped forward, nudging Tom gently. It was clear that it trusted him completely. Tom guided the horses toward the safest part of the pasture, near the corner where a small grove of trees offered some shelter. He stayed calm, speaking softly to the animals as they moved together. The herd followed slowly, trusting him and the horse he had saved. The wind howled, but Tom kept a steady hand and a calm voice. As the rain poured down, the herd huddled together. The younger horses pressed close to the older ones, and the wounded horse remained near Tom, occasionally nudging his hand. Tom felt a deep sense of connection. These animals had chosen to trust him, and he could see that they relied on his guidance. He knew that kindness and patience had earned this bond. The storm grew stronger, with heavy rain and flashes of lightning. Tom stayed with the herd, holding his hat against the wind. He could feel the energy of the storm all around him, but he remained calm, knowing that the horses needed him. The herd stayed close, moving gently as the wind blew. Tom was careful not to make sudden movements. He let the animals know through his calm presence that they were safe. After what felt like hours, the storm began to pass. The wind slowed and the rain became lighter. The clouds started to move away, revealing patches of blue sky. The herd shook off the rain and began grazing again, calmer and more relaxed. Tom smiled, feeling a deep satisfaction. He had guided them safely through the storm, and the trust between them had grown even stronger. The wounded horse stayed near Tom, nuzzling his hand as if saying thank you. The rest of the herd remained close but moved freely, enjoying the fresh grass after the rain. Tom realized that the storm had not only tested the horse's trust, but also his own patience and courage. The experience had brought them closer together, creating a bond that would last. As the evening approached, Tom prepared a small area with fresh hay near the fence for the horses to rest. The herd settled down, calm and peaceful. The wounded horse lay down near the edge of the group, watching over the others. Tom sat on the fence and watched them, feeling a quiet joy in his heart. He knew that the plains were full of surprises, but moments like this made every challenge worthwhile. The sun set behind the hills, casting a warm glow over the ranch. The wild herd remained nearby and the wounded horse rested close to Tom. He felt proud and humble at the same time. One small act of kindness had created a connection that was growing stronger every day. The herd had come to trust him, and he had learned that patience, care, and respect could build bonds even with wild animals. Before heading inside, Tom stood quietly and looked at the plains stretching under the evening sky. The storm had passed, leaving the land fresh and alive. The herd had weathered the storm, and their trust in him had deepened. Tom knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but he felt ready. He had learned an important lesson. True trust could be earned through kindness, patience, and understanding. The morning after the storm was calm and bright. Tom stepped outside and breathed deeply, enjoying the fresh scent of wet grass and clean air. The plains looked more alive than ever. The wild herd was already near the pasture, grazing peacefully. The wounded horse he had saved yesterday stood nearby, alert and strong. Tom smiled. Over the past few days, their bond had grown stronger, and he felt proud of the trust he had earned from these wild animals. Tom decided to take more steps to make the ranch safe and comfortable for the herd. He repaired old fences along the pasture, making sure none of the young horses could wander into danger. He added extra wooden posts to create a small boundary, not to trap the horses but to guide them toward safe areas. While working, he noticed how the herd watched him carefully, curious but calm. The wounded horse stayed near him, occasionally nudging his hand. After fixing the fences, Tom carried buckets of fresh water along the edge of the pasture. He wanted the horses to have easy access to drinking water without fear. The wounded horse approached first and drank eagerly. Slowly, some of the wild herd followed. Their movements were cautious but confident. Tom realized that by providing care without forcing contact, he had earned their trust completely. Later, Tom scattered fresh hay near the fence, letting the horses graze safely. The herd moved closer, nibbling the hay, and the wounded horse remained at his side. Tom spoke softly to them, calling each one by small names he had given them. "Easy, friend. You're safe here." The horses responded with gentle whinnies and soft movements, showing a quiet acknowledgement. Tom spent the day observing the herd. He noticed how they communicated with one another. Older horses guided the younger ones, while the wounded horse often moved between them, as if acting as a bridge between the herd and Tom. He could see that trust and respect were at the center of their behavior. Each horse seemed aware of his presence, but none were afraid. Tom felt a deep satisfaction knowing that his small acts of care had created this bond. By afternoon, Tom decided to ride Daisy along the pasture again. He moved slowly, keeping his voice soft and steady. The wounded horse followed him, while the rest of the herd watched carefully. Some stepped closer, grazing near the fence, and others lifted their heads to observe. Tom noticed that the herd now seemed more relaxed around him. They had accepted him as part of their environment, without losing their freedom. Tom also began leaving small treats like carrots and apples near the fence. He did not want to overwhelm them, but he wanted the herd to understand that his presence meant safety and kindness. The wounded horse always ate first, encouraging the others to come closer. Over time, the wild horses grew more confident, approaching to drink water from the troughs or eat hay from the ground. Tom felt joy in seeing them relax and trust him. As the day turned into evening, Tom prepared a resting area with fresh hay near the fence. He knew the horses were wild and could not be kept inside, but he wanted them to have a safe place to rest near the ranch. The herd settled down, grazing calmly, and the wounded horse rested close to Tom. He sat on the fence and watched them quietly, feeling a deep connection with these animals. Neighbors passing by started noticing the unusual sight of wild horses visiting the ranch regularly. Some stopped to watch from a distance. Tom would smile and tell them to respect the animals and give them space. He explained that these horses had chosen to trust him, and it was important not to disturb them. The visitors often left inspired by the calmness and grace of the herd. As the sun set behind the hills, Tom reflected on the day. He realized that caring for the herd was more than feeding or guiding them. It was about understanding their needs, respecting their nature, and allowing trust to grow naturally. One small act of kindness toward a wounded horse had turned into a bond with an entire herd. He felt humbled and grateful for the experience. That night, Tom returned to his house feeling content. The herd rested near the fence, calm and peaceful. The wounded horse stayed close, occasionally looking toward him with bright, trusting eyes. Tom knew that tomorrow would bring new opportunities to strengthen the connection. He felt confident that with patience and care, the bond between humans and wild horses could grow even stronger. The plains were wide and full of life. Tom understood that the wild horses had chosen to be near him, not out of fear but out of trust. He felt a quiet joy, knowing that his ranch had become a safe place for these animals. The wind rustled through the grass and the herd moved gently together, showing harmony and respect. Tom smiled, ready for the days ahead, knowing that kindness and patience had created something extraordinary on his ranch. The next morning, Tom woke to a bright and clear day. The air was fresh and the plains stretched far and wide under a soft blue sky. He stepped outside and looked toward the pasture. The wild herd was already moving gently across the grass, grazing near the fence. The horse he had saved stood proudly at the edge of the herd, alert and healthy. Tom smiled. Over the past days, he had built a strong bond with these animals, and now their presence felt like a quiet, comforting part of the ranch. As he was feeding Daisy, Tom noticed a small group of travelers approaching along the dirt road. They had horses and backpacks, and they seemed curious as they walked closer to the ranch. Tom waved and called out softly, "Good morning. Please be careful around the horses." The travelers nodded and their eyes widened as they noticed the herd grazing nearby. The sight of so many wild horses close to a ranch amazed them. Tom walked slowly toward the travelers, motioning for them to keep a safe distance. "These horses are wild," he explained. "They trust me, but they can be easily frightened. Please do not approach them too quickly." The travelers stepped back and watched in awe. They had never seen a herd of wild horses so calm and free, yet so close to a human. Tom could see the admiration in their faces. One of the travelers asked, "How did this happen?" "How did they come to trust you?" Tom smiled, thinking of the small act that had started everything. "It began with one horse," he said. "I found it injured near the river. I gave it water and food and cared for its wounds. That horse healed and returned to the wild herd. They came to the ranch the next day and have been visiting ever since. It shows that even a small act of kindness can create trust. The travelers were quiet for a moment, watching the herd move gracefully across the grass. The wounded horse, now fully healed, ran alongside the herd, its movements strong and confident. One of the travelers whispered, "It is incredible to see such trust between humans and wild animals." Tom nodded. He had realized that patience, care, and respect could create bonds that were rare and special. He invited the travelers to sit near the fence while keeping a safe distance. "You can watch, but do not try to touch them," he said. The travelers agreed and stayed quietly observing the herd. Tom pointed out each horse and told small stories about their behavior. He explained how the wounded horse often acted as a link between him and the wild herd. The travelers listened with fascination, clearly inspired by the calm and gentle animals. The herd grazed peacefully, occasionally lifting their heads to look at Tom and the travelers. The wounded horse stayed close to him, nuzzling his hand as if sharing its comfort. Tom felt a warm pride in that moment. He realized that his patience had not only helped the horse but had also created a story worth sharing. The herd had become a living example of trust and care, and it was inspiring everyone who saw it. The travelers asked many questions, and Tom answered each one with patience. He explained the importance of respecting the horse's space, providing food and water without forcing contact, and understanding their behavior. The travelers nodded, taking notes and quietly observing. They could see that these horses were not only wild but also intelligent and sensitive. Tom smiled, knowing that the bond he had built was teaching others the value of kindness. By late afternoon, the travelers prepared to leave. They thanked Tom for sharing his story and for allowing them to witness the herd up close. "This is something we will never forget," one traveler said. "It shows how humans and animals can live in harmony if we are patient and respectful." Tom nodded and waved as they rode away, feeling a quiet satisfaction. After the travelers left, Tom returned to the pasture. The herd moved freely, grazing and playing in the soft sunlight. The wounded horse stayed close, occasionally nudging him gently. Tom reflected on the day. One small act of care had grown into something extraordinary. The herd had become a regular presence, and now it was inspiring others as well. He realized that kindness could create ripples that extended far beyond what anyone could imagine. As the sun set behind the hills, casting warm orange and pink colors across the plains, Tom sat on the fence and watched the herd. The wild horses were calm and the wounded horse rested nearby. He felt proud, not because he had control over the animals, but because he had earned their trust through patience and care. The ranch had become a sanctuary, a place where humans and wild horses could coexist peacefully. Tom knew that tomorrow would bring more opportunities to strengthen this connection. He had seen the power of small acts of kindness and understood that trust could be built slowly but strongly. The plains were vast and full of life, and the herd had chosen to make the ranch part of their world. Tom felt a quiet joy, knowing that he had become part of something special, a bond between humans and wild animals that would last for many seasons to come. The morning was calm and bright over the ranch. Tom woke early, feeling a quiet excitement in the air. He stepped outside and looked toward the pasture. The wild herd was already moving across the grass, grazing peacefully near the fence. The wounded horse he had saved stood proudly at the edge of the group, alert and strong. Tom smiled. Over the past days, he had seen trust grow between him and the herd, and now it felt like a part of his daily life. Tom fed Daisy and checked the fences one last time before heading toward the pasture. He carried fresh water and some apples and carrots he had picked from the garden. The herd watched him from a distance, their ears alert and eyes curious. The wounded horse nudged his hand gently as if guiding the others. Tom realized that this small act of care had turned into a lasting bond, with not just one horse but an entire herd of wild animals. As he approached, the herd moved slowly closer. They did not rush or show fear. The wounded horse led the way, encouraging the others to follow. Tom placed the water buckets and scattered the treats on the grass. The horses stepped forward cautiously, drinking and nibbling. Tom remained calm, speaking softly to them. "It's safe, friends. You can drink and eat." His steady voice reassured the herd, and they responded with gentle movements and soft whinnies. Throughout the morning, Tom observed the herd carefully. He noticed how they communicated, the way older horses guided the younger ones, and how the wounded horse now acted as a bridge between him and the group. The herd had accepted him fully, not out of fear but out of trust and understanding. Tom felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that his patience and kindness had created this extraordinary bond. By midday, Tom decided to walk among the horses while staying calm and careful. The wounded horse stayed at his side and some of the others followed slowly, curious but cautious. He let them move freely, never forcing contact, only allowing them to decide when they felt safe. The herd grazed around him, occasionally lifting their heads to glance at him. Tom could feel their intelligence and awareness. They were wild, yet they trusted him completely. In the afternoon, a gentle breeze blew across the plains and the herd became more playful. Some horses ran in small circles, kicking up the soft dust of the pasture. The wounded horse ran alongside them, full of energy and joy. Tom watched, smiling. This was a moment of true harmony. The herd had returned to full health, and the wounded horse was now leading them with confidence and trust. Tom spent the day providing food and fresh water and observing the herd's movements. He noticed how they rested together, communicated silently, and protected one another. The wounded horse often returned to nuzzle him gently, a sign of their bond. The rest of the herd stayed close, grazing calmly, showing that they understood the ranch was a safe and peaceful place. Tom felt grateful for this rare experience. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the plains, Tom prepared a safe resting area near the fence. The herd gathered there, grazing gently before lying down to rest. The wounded horse stayed near him, watching over the others. Tom sat on the fence and looked out at the vast land. The herd moved freely, yet they had chosen to remain close to him. It was a quiet but powerful connection, born from a simple act of kindness. Tom reflected on the journey that had brought him here. A single act of helping one wounded horse had created trust, respect, and friendship with an entire herd of wild animals. He had learned that patience, care, and understanding were more powerful than force or control. The plains had taught him that harmony with nature was possible, and he had been lucky enough to witness it firsthand. As night fell, the stars appeared above the ranch, and the herd settled near the fence. The wounded horse rested close to Tom, and the other horses huddled nearby, calm and peaceful. Tom felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The herd had chosen to trust him, and he had honored that trust. His ranch had become a sanctuary, not just for the horses, but for the spirit of care and respect that had grown between them. Tom finally stepped inside his house, feeling content and happy. He knew that the wild herd would continue to visit, that the wounded horse would remain strong and confident, and that the bond he had built would last for many seasons. He looked out at the pasture one last time before turning off the lights. The plains were quiet but full of life, and the herd had become a part of his world. For Tom, this was more than just caring for animals. It was a story of connection, trust, and kindness. A simple act of giving water to a wounded horse had changed everything. The herd,